One evening, shortly after this encounter, I was in the company of the oldest high priest and his sons. I was there on my regular mission, which was to further the project of the aqueduct. It was, as we knew from the beginning, a very difficult mission. It would need much skill and patience to wring from the high priest the permission to lay hands on the temple treasury. But we had not expected such resistance as we actually encountered. They were united in their opposition. They were of a single opinion. The temple treasure is sanctuary, and sanctuary may not be touched. Even my friend Theophilus concurred in this judgment. What surprised me most, however, was the attitude of the youngest son, Hanan. I had expected a more intelligent and enlightened outlook on his part. He understood and admired our Roman civilization. He honored our institutions, and he had, as I supposed, the outlook of a statesman. But there came no help from him. The national temple treasury, touch that, and you undermine the faith of the people in the temple itself. The Jews of all lands will be outraged if we lay a finger on the possession of widows and orphans. The temple will cease to be the one unchallenged center and unifying sanctity of the Jewish people. No, no, such a step may well undermine the foundations of our state and people. We don't deny that your aqueduct is an important enterprise, but the money would have to be raised through new taxation. It will be necessary for the proconsul at Antioch to approach the imperial government, but the temple treasury must remain untouched. I had reason to suspect that it was something other than the so-called sanctity of the treasury or the sentiments of Jewry within and without Judea which produced this unity of opposition among the various parties. The temple monies were being collected for the ultimate rebellion against Rome. We Romans are not easily deceived in such matters. We know the strategy of the nations. Gold is might. Gold buys arms, armies, and allies. And thus, listening to the high priest and his family, I decided to drop a hint, to touch on something they would find uncomfortable. I brought up the subject of the Galilean rabbi. "You remember," I said to the high priest, "the man of whom I spoke to you, the man of Galilee who has been assembling about him a group of dangerous followers? I saw him only the other day in the temple area. He was carrying on the same agitation, quite openly, in Jerusalem. There was no one about to stop him, and those that were gathered about him were of exactly the same element as flocked to him in Galilee, the restless troublemakers and rebels. He probably brought them along with him. I find it altogether extraordinary that the overseer of the temple area should tolerate it. Altogether extraordinary." "Oh, Hegemon, do you mean the rabbi of Capharnaum?" asked the oldest of the high priests, and laughed so heartily that the tears started to his eyes. "You don't take him for a dangerous figure, do you? Why, he's—" and he made a little circular motion with his finger near his forehead. "He's what?" "Mad. Out of his wits. He drives evil spirits from others, and he himself is possessed by one. What do you think he says of himself? That he is nothing more nor less than the living bread of heaven, and all his followers must eat his flesh and drink his blood before they can enter the gates of the heavenly kingdom." There was a burst of laughter in the great hall. "You see," said the old high priest wearily, "all sorts of visionaries assemble in the temple courts. Prophets, messengers of the Lord. Thus we are afflicted with all sorts of foolish visionaries. As long as they remain within the limits of the law and confine themselves to religious or ethical sermons, strengthening the faith and exhorting the people to piety and good deeds, they can have all the visions they want. We don't interfere. Naturally, we keep watch on them and see that they observe the provisions I have mentioned. If they are not a danger to the existing order, as long as they don't create a tumult in the temple, they can babble all they want. And let me say that perhaps the worst thing you can do is to persecute one of these enthusiasts prematurely. Trust me, Hegemon, there are among them such as would only be too eager to achieve the status of martyrs. That is their first big step. It is then that they become really dangerous. As for this Galilean of whom you speak, Hegemon, I should not be at all surprised if he too were waiting for just this windfall, to be dragged off, tried, and persecuted, perhaps even put to death. I understand that he has hinted as much in his utterances. We know these men, but we are not going to play their game. No doubt he thought that the moment he appeared in the temple courts with his followers, the boors and peasants of Galilee, we would send the temple watch after him and have him haled before the Sanhedrin. But as soon as we learned that his talk was harmless, that it was not directed against Rome or the temple, but had to do only with dreams of resurrection and the kingdom of heaven, he is going to parcel the latter out among his followers, we ignored him. And now you see to what fantastic absurdities he has gone. He talks of having his followers eat his flesh and drink his blood. I would not let this pass off so easily. I addressed myself to the high priest. But the man's power is growing over the people. He has magic powers which awaken faith. He has but to say a word to the lame, and they rise and walk. Such is the strength of his spirit over the sick. I myself have witnessed him exercise it in Galilee, and in the temple court they pointed out to me the man he had brought back from the dead. Let me say that this resurrected creature does indeed look as though he had been among the dead. I insist that one who has this skill in suggestion is not the harmless dreamer you would make him out to be. You cannot know what he will command his followers to do. Only one thing is sure, they will obey him blindly. Time enough for that, Hegemon, when it happens. Trust us, we won't have much difficulty with him. We have overcome much more dangerous rebels. I am against hasty, ill-advised, and premature measures. Until now, the man has not shown himself to be dangerous, and on the whole, it appears that the moral content of his sermons is not at all disturbing. On the contrary, if we ignore the nonsense about eating his flesh and blood, we could even support much of his doctrine, which has to do with repentance and preparation for what he calls the kingdom of heaven. What exactly he means by his kingdom of heaven, I do not know, but whatever it is, he exhorts the people to do good, to love each other, eschew oppression of each other, and so on. It's perhaps a little lofty and exaggerated, but that's to be expected of one who thinks he brings a message direct from the divinity. As a matter of fact, I believe him to be much more of a danger to the Pharisees than to us. He's a hard nut for them to crack. They too believe in those follies, in the resurrection, angels and demons and what-not. Let them look to it. He is no danger to us, at least not yet. Then again, we rely on the healthy instincts of the masses. But it appears that the masses follow him. The masses follow anyone who promises them a little happiness, either in this world or in what they call the world to come. But, my friend, the masses are easily won and as easily lost. Besides, here the high priest changed his tone, we did have in mind some time ago the idea of bringing the man to trial before the Sanhedrin, not for crimes against Rome, but for possible crimes against our faith. We were about to issue orders to the temple watch for his arrest, but the matter became known when certain quite important persons intervened. I was, I must admit, quite astonished at the quality of those who were ready to defend him. There was, for instance, Joseph Arimathea, a member of the Sanhedrin. There was also Simon Cyrene. What astonished me most, however, was that even Nicodemon the Pharisee, a pious and learned man, came to his defense. For I hear that there's a good deal of quarreling between the Pharisees and the Rabbi of Galilee. I am told that he is forever denouncing and insulting them. But for all that, this same Nicodemon came to us in the greatest haste to assure us that the Rabbi hadn't intended any offense to the faith. It was only a way he had of speaking, with parables and stories. Nicodemon went further than that. He launched into quite a panegyric on the Rabbi, exalted his virtues, and advised us strongly to let the matter rest and see what would come out of it. It appears, if you like, that they have ideas concerning this Rabbi. They think that... But at this point I observed that the sons of the former high priest, and particularly Eleazar, the oldest of them, were making frantic signs at their father. Suddenly, old Hanan interrupted his long narrative, shrugged his shoulders, and changed the theme. Yes, he appears to be a very pious sort of person, indeed a little too far gone in his conception of piety. He is obviously of the party of the Pharisees, even if he does have his differences with them. No, Hegemon, there's no danger in the man. Were it otherwise, such people of standing would never have intervened for him. But what is it exactly that they think of him? I asked sharply, turning back the conversation to the point where the old high priest had broken it off. What do they expect of him? Oh, that. They expect him to bring the masses back onto the path of righteousness. Unfortunately, it cannot be denied that faith has grown weak among the masses, and such preachers and leaders may increase the faith, and with it the gifts and sacrifices for the temple. Very obviously, this was not what old Hanan had almost let slip when his sons interrupted him. The father high priest had let his tongue run away with him. If Joseph Arimathea, whom I knew quite well, and who was a man of high culture, had intervened for the rabbi of Galilee, the case was not so trivial as they would have me believe. The same was true regarding their rabbi Nicodemus, an opponent of the Sadducees, a man held in great honor and beloved of the masses. It was very odd indeed that a teacher of such standing should come to the defense of a Galilean rabbi whose following consisted of ignorant boors, as the learned and pious Pharisees called them contemptuously. I smelled conspiracy. They expected of the man of Galilee something other than vague ethical instruction. What was it, then, that men like Joseph Arimathea, Nicodemus, and Simon saw in him? I never found out, not even later when his own followers abandoned him at the time of his death, while these remained faithful to him. No, that was an eternal mystery. But you, Yochanan, surely you can tell me something about that. And suddenly Pan Wiadomski came to. His eyes lost their remote dreamy look and focused brilliantly on me. Can you tell me what their expectations were concerning this man? Can you tell me what the father high priest was about to say when his sons interrupted him? If you have the secret, you may disclose it now, when everything is over, when none of us is among the living, when all of us have become shadows and memories. What, I? The question startled me almost out of my wits. Yes, you, Yochanan. Were you not of the pupils of Nicodemus? Did I not see you often enough in the band of comrades which formed round the sons of Simon Cyrene, Alexander, and Rufus? Don't I remember how you tried to break through the ranks of our legionaries when we were leading the man of Galilee to the cross on Golgotha? And how often have I not seen you following Nicodemus, or following the man of Nazareth, and on that special occasion, too, in the garden of Gat Shemen? Think back, Yochanan, remember. Something extraordinary was happening within me.